Alrighty, if you could please start off with a little introduction about yourself.
So my name is Dr. Yipeng Ge. I'm a family doctor. I've also studied public health, including the impacts of settler colonialism on health in the context of Canada, affecting Indigenous peoples, First Nations, Inuit, Métis, as well as Palestinian health in the context of occupied Palestine from the lens of settler colonialism and how that affects people's health in these contexts.
And what are your goals and ambitions personally?
I used to have, I think, goals and ambitions because I think there was, at least I had this understanding that the world works in a certain way where if you could, share the research that you do, gather the facts that you do, present an argument with evidence, which is the way that we're trained in medicine and public health, that people would change their ways or change their policies as it pertains to a certain health issue. But the case of, genocide in Gaza, the brutal genocidal war on Palestine that we're seeing has really shown to me that the world just doesn't work that way, right? And the world hasn't worked that way in quite some time. That you don't just present the facts and the evidence and the research and people will change their ways. It requires people power. It requires mass mobilization. It requires organizing efforts from activists, from students, from professionals, from people of all walks of life to be able to change the ways of institutions, governments, companies, to not be invested and fully actively involved in the military and war. I say all this because I think, goals and ambitions, I'm just trying to spend time with good people, with good politics, and organize and try to envision a world that is life-affirming for all peoples, and that's what I'm guided by nowadays.
That's very well said. I think that's a very good introduction to who you are. We are here today because you announced on your social media that you are pursuing the University of Ottawa in a Human Rights Tribunal. Before we get into that, can you please give a recap of your suspension from the University of Ottawa?
About exactly 2 years ago, the University of Ottawa suspended me from my training in public health and preventive medicine without so much as a conversation, without any previous warning. And it was in the context of social media posts that supported Palestinian human rights and their right to self-determination and liberation from brutal, illegal military occupation at the hands of Israel. And when a faculty member at the University of Ottawa doxed me and shared social media posts from my then private Instagram account, the university took unilateral actions to suspend me. And they later reinstated me after their own professionalism subcommittee investigated and found that I indeed did not break the social media policies or the professionalism policies that the university accused me of breaking, and accused me of things like anti-Semitism, inflammatory, hateful rhetoric, and cited all these different social media posts that had anything to do and mention with Palestine. And so this is, a very clear and blatant example of anti-Palestinian racism, to frame anything associated with Palestine or Palestinian human rights with things that they are not, like anti-Semitism, like violence, like terrorism. And so the way in which the university acted was extremely racist on the basis of anti-Palestinian racism and extremely discriminatory because of my association with the Palestinian people and their right to self-determination. And when I brought these things up to the people that suspended me, they ended up not being willing to acknowledge the role of anti-Palestinian racism within my case, but also other cases at the university, and also not even offer an apology. When the professionalism subcommittee, later I learned through an access to information request, their internal documents show that the committee even recommended an apology, which the university still has not offered.
When you say you were doxxed, can you elaborate on what that means, please?
Yeah, so doxing is when someone acquires information about you or has social media posts or words or pictures associated with you, and they share them without your permission on social media or in any other kind of platform, and oftentimes framing it in a way that extracts different meaning from it, accusatory meaning, but also they do it in a way to try to silence, suppress, or repress that person from doing those same things. And so that's exactly what happened to me in the end of October, early November 2023, where a faculty member, a physician in the Ottawa community, went online after acquiring these social media posts from medical student acquaintances of mine that followed me on my private social media, and screenshotted those and shared it with him. And he shared it on his blog posts for obesity, weight management, and he shared it on his private or his public X or Twitter profile as well. And initially he said, oh, I'm not gonna share the identity of who this person is because they are someone who is on the board of the Canadian Medical Association. They should know better and all this kind of stuff. And then a day later, he shares my identity. And because he did that, I also filed an internal complaint with the University of Ottawa through their bullying and harassment portal. And that was also a complete waste of my time because the university came back to me, the representative that dealt with that complaint, and said, well, we approached him and basically told us, why are you having a conversation with me when I'm the one that should be investigated and whatnot. And the posts that he put up are defamatory, are hateful and racist, and they remain up. Multiple blog posts about me, multiple social media posts about me. I asked the university representative to ask him to take them down. And when they did this, they came back to me and said, why did you even put me in this position? Because now he's angry at them. So I've asked the university to do the most basic of things, to basically do their job of holding their own faculty members accountable, which they have utterly failed to do, and actually have come back to me and complained to me that I'm asking them to do their jobs.
Would you be willing to say what position that person held at the university who came back to you and complained?
They were the faculty affairs assistant dean. So this is the dean responsible for handling complaints about faculty members.
You interviewed with the Fulcrum before regarding this issue, but you were unable to comment on some questions. Are you able to give us some elaboration on them now?
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. Depends on the questions. I'll try my best.
Perfect. Was there ever a formal process to your suspension?
So the way that they suspended me was through their professionalism policy. And there's levels for which someone can be disciplined on the basis of being quote unquote unprofessional, from what is level 1, level 2, level 3. And actually before all those things, you can actually just have a conversation with the person, right? That, oh, this complaint came in, let's have a conversation, have a conversation about the complaint. The university chose to do not that and go to the most extreme measure of a level 3 professionalism complaint, which is on the basis of kind of 2 categories. Usually it's, as per their own policy, it's about when someone repeatedly continues to do something after being told you need to stop. That did not apply to me because we didn't have any conversation beforehand. The other case is if there's a concern for the clinical care or conduct of the individual. So that was the basis in which they suspended me. They said, because you shared these social media posts in support of Palestine, we're equating that with you are a danger and safety risk to yourself and others. While I was actually at that point in time training in public health. So I was working at the Public Health Agency of Canada, vaccine safety data research, at a cubicle 2 days a week, and I was working from home 3 days a week. And I had a supervisor that would be there physically in person with me on the days I was there, and then touch base with me when I was working from home. I did not have anyone reporting to me, and I was working at this cubicle on vaccine safety, epidemiological research from a computer. And so they said, from that job, you're a danger to yourself and others, including patients. And the ironic thing was, I have been working as a family doctor independently from the university since I fully licensed and trained since August of 2023. So in that period of my own suspension from the university, where they said I'm a danger to myself and others, I was working with patients in a clinic, and that clinic supported me. They said, we don't have patient complaints, we don't have complaints from staff, we don't know why the university is doing this to you, we support you, keep doing what you're doing. So while I was working with my patients, the university had the audacity to accuse me of being unable to practice safe, competent medicine for patients when my day job was working in public health with them.
Reflecting on this experience now, is there any comments you want to make?
I mean, it's never too late for an institution to apologize and to recognize their wrongdoing. I think it takes a degree of humility, it takes a degree of growth to be able to do this. And we should be able to see anyone in this world be able to do something like that. I spent a lot of time having internal conversations with the the university, representatives of the university, like the Dean of Medicine, the Senior Vice Dean, to have these conversations. And they were very disappointing conversations because they couldn't acknowledge the role of anti-Palestinian racism. They couldn't offer, an apology, but instead they said, well, still stay because we see the value that you give to this institution and whatnot. And, the dean even bribed me for staying. They were like, well, we can offer you training, leadership training. We want to help you grow as a leader and support you in your leadership development. But then he joked oh, I can't offer something like an executive MBA. That'd be too expensive. But I can, we can pay for some leadership courses. So that was kind of where we left off, where I realized, you're not engaging in the substance of what we're talking about, which is the role of anti-Palestinian racism, how you did something that was really harmful, not only to me, but others, because other people felt this chilling effect from my suspension. And I spoke to many people who felt this way. And if you're not willing to kind of right that wrong, then I'm going to go elsewhere and put my labor and energy elsewhere to other institutions, to other spaces and people and communities. And I think the other thing I want to mention is I sat on faculty council, the highest governing committee for the Faculty of Medicine during this time, during 2023, and actually during my suspension. So in that time, we saw multiple cases of medical students facing suspension and even expulsion for social media posts about Palestine. And the level of anti-Palestinian, but also anti-Arab, anti-Muslim rhetoric that came through those spaces, faculty council meetings, where these are people who are the lead medical educators and researchers in the Ottawa region. And to see this blatant, unchecked discrimination happen before my eyes, and I had to be the one to kind of call it out in these spaces, and to have the meetings with the dean and the senior vice dean to say do you not see what's happening in these spaces? That there's this McCarthyist, witch hunt after people and young people, students that are in support of Palestine. And the way in which you're handling these things is incredibly wrong. And actually the way that they were handling things for these students was completely being made up as they went. So the question I asked and posed in one of these meetings was, what's the process? What's the policy? What's the bylaw that we're going under? And the dean actually said, well, there isn't one. We're in uncharted territory. We have our own legal counsel that is writing up the process as we go. But the legal counsel for the university has the interest of the university at the forefront and the interests of the faculty members to protect them from litigation. And they actually had these conversations in these meetings that I was a part of, where they worried about, how is it possible that a student could come back to us with a case of discrimination? And they were trying to use their legal counsel to create the bylaws in a way and create the procedure in a way to protect the university, to protect the faculty members that were aiming to repress and suspend and possibly expel students, medical students. So the institution did not have the interests of the students at the forefront. The institution had the interest of itself. And just, I think, seeing how this played out just made me lose complete faith in an educational institution that should and is actually only existing because of students. Academic institutions only exist because students exist and come to the institution to learn. And so there's no way for me to stay in an academic institution that does this to its own learners and students.
When you say that you saw other students face, I don't want to use the word tribunal, but face the consequences and the reevaluation of their social media posts, are there any written documents that are public, or was it all done in camera?
The way that the university handled these cases was really sneaky, because I had actually sat on faculty council a couple years back as well as a resident representative, and the way that these meetings for faculty council took place were that they were virtual. There was a lot of documents prepared and you could review the documents in advance, but the way in which the university chose to handle these student cases was, they're saying the meetings are now in person and there will be no documents provided. We'll present the documents when you get into the room. So the way that they handled this was to try to limit any information from being leaked, essentially. Because I think, they ultimately knew that what they were doing was wrong. You only do these kinds of tactics if there's something to hide.
Since their suspension and an offer of reinstatement without an apology, you have left campus. What have you been doing since then?
There's so much work out there to be done, like organizing work, like work with communities, working directly with them. And I know that this example of anti-Palestinian racism of mine is not unique. It is, in a climate of so many other cases of repression. And ultimately, I know that racism is a distraction from the important work that we want to be involved in. And so I recentered the work and time and labor to communities that matter most. I found myself working in Gaza as a volunteer medic. I found myself sharing this testimony with other people in spaces. I found myself organizing with people locally and doing a lot of other kinds of activism work to be able to try to imagine and co-create like a different world that does not center capitalism and colonialism and imperialism, the things that not only is creating the conditions for genocide in Palestine and Gaza, but also many other places like Sudan and Congo and Tigray. But it's also creating the conditions, like unlivable conditions for our own community members and neighbors around us, affecting like homelessness, affecting all these like intersectional issues that we know are fueled by these forms of oppression. And so I keep strategizing and working with other people in different organizing spaces in many different parts of the world, but also really rooted in our struggles locally to be able to put the pressure where it's needed on decision makers, on companies, on pension plans, on our medical associations and institutions, so that the societies that we live in here in Canada, in the West, where we have so much privilege and opportunity, it is only because of these forms of oppression where a lot of other people in the world suffer at the hands of these kinds of forms of oppression that are fueled by our institutions, fueled by the things that we actually benefit from here. So it's making those connections, it's educating others, it's I think working with like-minded folks that have really good politics, but also are dedicated to a lifelong struggle for collective liberation for all peoples.